Welcome to What's Your Story, the place where businesses you know track back to the kids you don't. Paper routes in the dark, side hustles in cramped bedrooms, and one no that turned into a new lane. We roll the tape all the way back. Founders open up about the hits, the misses, and the moments they almost walked away from, so you can see the patterns sooner, dodge the traps they fell into, and push your own story further and faster. Lean in. Their past is your playbook. If you find this useful and informative, please share it with someone whose journey you want to make just a little bit easier. Welcome to What's Your Story. Today, I'm excited to have Will Langson on the call here, and he is the Managing Director of Zesty. And we're diving in deep to understand his story and understand a little bit more about Will. Will, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
All right. So, Will, as we're growing up, there's a lot of people that are influential into who we are and what we do. Can you explain an early childhood experience that shaped who you are today?
Well, so I guess the first person that sort of comes to mind. So when I was about 13 years old, I was really interested in radio and TV, but specifically radio. And I wrote to the I must have been 13. I wrote to the head producer at one of the large radio stations here in New Zealand, and he invited me into the studio to meet a bunch of people and do a bit of work experience and that sort of stuff. And so what I ended up doing was going in during the school holidays and doing a bit of work experience, and met a lot of people through that. But one of the people that I met during that time, I think I must have been perhaps 14 when I met him. His name's Andrew Patterson. He was a radio host down here in New Zealand, and he was someone who very much mentored me through, I guess, through a lot of the radio stuff, but he was also, his whole show and his whole, I guess, journalism career was surrounding business. So you can imagine that there are lots of sort of things that I learned at a very young age through knowing Andrew. So I think he's the first person that comes to mind, but I'm sure there are plenty other people as well.
So what's a challenge that's tested you more than you have ever expected in your early years? Was there a moment where things didn't go as planned, and how did you adapt?
So when I must have been, I'm trying to think, I must have been 9 years old. And I saw a need in our classroom that a lot of students were turning up to class without pens and pencils. Oh. We in New Zealand, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in New Zealand, the pens and pencils aren't provided by the school. They perhaps are today. It's probably a bit better resourced today, but back then you had to bring your own pens and pencils to school, and some people would forget that, and they would turn up without anything. So I guess this is possibly the first piece of entrepreneurship that I ever got involved with. I started a pen rental business at the ripe age of 9. Now, I didn't want to start a pen selling business because I wanted the pens back at the end of it, because I needed to sell them the next day as well. I couldn't just pop down to the shop and get more. And that was going very well. I made all of $20 until the teacher found out, and I got in a fair amount of trouble because apparently you're not allowed to charge other students for using your pens and pencils in the classroom.
Okay, so you just had to let it just kind of go away.
Had to let that one die.
What's a belief that you had early on that you had to unlearn?
I would say the idea that there is one track in life, and that is you go to school, you go to university, you get a job, you build up a career, you start at the bottom, and you build up, And, eventually after 40 years, you get your gold watch, you retire, and that's life. Because I think genuinely, I think that's what people are taught. I think that's just what people believe. And whilst that that certainly isn't something that I will have been taught in my family from my parents. It was quite the opposite. But I think just from society in general, and school, and some of the big influences that you have at a young age, your teachers and just the general people around you outside of your family, they're all telling you at a young age that there is one track to success in life, and that's to do well in school, to do well in university, and to then get a good solid job, and which is a great track for a lot of people. It's a really good track for a lot of people, but certainly wouldn't have suited me. And I think that's something that I had to unlearn, especially as I wanted to. I didn't go to university. I left school. In fact, I hadn't even left school when I started this business. I started this business at 17, and I remember picking up my first client. I got a phone call while I was in my statistics class, and there was a sort of no phone policy in the school, but my phone rang, and normally what would happen is the teacher would take it off you, and you'd have to pick it up at the end of the week. But the teacher knew that I'd started this business, and she said, "Is it a work call? Is it a business call?" And I said, "Yeah." So she just said, "Yeah, just step up the class and take it." And that was my first client.
That's fantastic. So you're absolutely right to unlearn something like that you're taught through all of your early years, that there's only one way of doing things. And to have that entrepreneur mindset had to have been very restrictive. When did you was there somebody in your past that basically said that was like more, I won't say more louder, but more that you listened to more and said, "Hey, you can do anything that you want. It's not just one path." How did you come to that realization that it's not just a single path in grade school or in high school?
I think
as you're growing up, what would be a single most piece of advice that you would give other budding entrepreneurs?
Just do stuff. I would say just almost. It's so easy to overthink everything that you do, and you can come up with these fantastic plans and ideas of what you want to do with your life and what you want to do with your business. And it's so easy to then look at that and think, this is either going to be too hard, or what will such and such think about it, or, what are my friends going to think? What's my family going to think? But sometimes in life you just need to do stuff, and post that post that video on YouTube if that's what you want to get into. Post that video, or post on social media. Launch that business, launch whatever it is that you're wanting to do, and don't be afraid to fail, because the amount of times, the amount of failures that every business owner endures in their career is significantly larger than the amount of successes that they have. Mm-hmm. But they need to get through those failures to get to the successes. And I think the piece of advice that I'd give to people is don't worry about the failures. Fail fast, as they say, but fail forward. So make sure that you're always learning the lessons, and make sure that you're not if you do have a failure, make sure you continue. You say, "Yep, okay, I own that. Let's move on. Let's move forward. Let's take the lessons out of it and make something good of it."
Excellent. Bravo, Will. Bravo. I actually tell my guys that all the time. Fail fast and fail forward. In fact, I actually learn more from failures than I do from successes. Successes are part of trying multiple different things and failing. I grow more and learn more from every failure. So I tell my guys, I want them to fail and I want them to own up to it as fast as they can, because then that way that helps move them forward. So there was a problem that showed up, and like your biggest thing that you ever had to deal with. What was it?
So when I started this business, I started it with my brother. This was back in 2013. And for the first 10 years of the business, or for the first nine or 10 years of the business, we ran it together, and we had these very separate roles in the business. So I was very much on the sort of sales side of it, and client relationships and strategy and that sort of stuff. Whereas my brother Jamie, he was very much on the operations side. So he was doing looking after all of the website development and all of the, I guess, production side of the business. And yeah, so about, I think it was 9.5 years into the business, so very much set in stone. He came to me and basically said, "Will, I'm not really enjoying this anymore. I want out." And as you can imagine, that does raise some challenges, because first and foremost, I wanted to, maintain the relationship with Jamie, which I've very much done. In fact, it's gotten even stronger since then, since he left the business. And so that was the key thing I wanted to do. But also I wanted to continue running the business, and there were so many areas that I didn't even know anything about. And when you've got multiple people in a business, especially if they're both running the business and owning the business, you perhaps don't realize how much stuff there is that you as the owner don't know, because you're relying on the other person to know that stuff. And it was quite eye-opening actually at the time, because I remember just thinking through everything that Jamie does or did in the business, and all the responsibilities he had, and everything that he had managed and set up over the years, and had such a deep understanding of, that I didn't have that knowledge of, and I had to learn all of that very quickly, because he gave me a fair amount of time. It's about 3 months effectively notice, if you like. He had some ideas of what he wanted to go and do, and I wanted to support him in that. So I didn't want to say, no, you have to stay. You're 50%, you own 50% of this business. You have to stay. I wanted him to be doing the things that he wanted to be doing. So I wanted him to be able to leave the business if he wanted to. So I think one of the biggest challenges was learning everything that he knew and was doing in the business, and learning it to a point where I could seamlessly continue everything that he was doing and continue the business. So that I would say was probably the biggest challenge that I've faced, and I can certainly remember some stressful times thinking, there are all these things, all these technical things that I was unaware of, or didn't really know how to do. A lot of web service stuff that I mean, you can probably appreciate that someone who doesn't know a whole lot about web servers suddenly having to learn everything very, very quickly. That's quite a challenge. So to Jamie's credit, though, he spent a lot of time whenever I wanted to. He would be happy to stop what he was doing and sit down with me and run through everything up until he left the business.
What habit or mindset carried you through the day-to-day challenges and the emotional toll?
I think it was just it's always been a continued desire to have an interesting life, and and
so
just,
lifestyle.
Yeah, a bit of lifestyle, a bit of I really enjoy meeting interesting people, and this role and this business has certainly allowed me to do that. And there are so many things that I love about doing what I do, and I think that really drove me through that, and sort of helped me through that period, because there was always there's always just been that desire to do my own thing, just do do well, enjoy it. And I think I've always had a desire to enjoy life. I've always enjoyed life. And I think being able to control what you do as well by being self-employed is certainly it gives you so much freedom to do whatever it is that you want to do, as long as you can figure out how you get there. And I think the idea of giving that up, that's just a non-starter for me. So I think that just that desire to have an interesting and fun life.
What lesson took you the longest to fully understand? And what advice would you give somebody facing a similar challenge like that today?
That is an interesting question, and it's one of those things that you're always learning.
Yeah,
you're always learning. So I'm sure, I think the biggest lesson is perhaps still being learned.
Fair.
Because it's one of those things that I think is you just never you never stop learning these things. Something that comes to mind, and we've sort of touched on it previously, is not caring what people think. And I've gone through a lot of my life not caring what people think to a degree. And a lot of people have often said, you're able to do things like run a business at a young age and do all these other bits and pieces and all of that because, you don't care what people think. But truth be told, I think everyone does to some extent. And I think even, I think that's probably one of the lessons that has taken the longest to learn, is to really sit back and think, okay, if you look at your life as a whole, if you look at everything that you're doing as a whole, and the sort of influences that you have, and those influences that are perhaps not that positive, the ones that are sort of blocking you from doing what you're wanting to do, thinking back to what we were talking earlier about, posting on social media and really putting yourself out there. I think one of the biggest lessons the longest lessons that I've learned, or it's taken me to learn, is just genuinely not caring what other people think, because I think it's so easy to assume everyone else knows what they're doing and knows more about life than you do.
Yeah.
But no one knows what they're doing in life.
Let's talk about your business, Zesty. So what is it you do, and who do you serve?
Yeah, sure. So Zesty is a website design agency. So we build websites, and we serve small and medium-sized businesses. So our role is to help small and medium-sized businesses basically make more money, get more clients, get more customers and more sales through their websites. So what we do is we sit down with our clients. We don't just say, what do you do? Okay, cool, here's a website. We sit down with them. We really understand exactly who they are, what they do, and most importantly, who they're targeting, who their ideal customers are. And what we do from there is we create a customer avatar. So we understand the top 5 of their customers, and what makes them the top 5. Normally, it's the ideal sort of work that they're doing for them. It's the good budget, that sort of stuff. So we sort of take the top 5 of their clients, and we find the similarities between those clients, and then we'll create a customer avatar based on that, and from there, after that point, we'll start designing the website, because only at that point do we understand exactly who we're building the website for. Now, a lot of people think that as a web designer, you're building a website for a business. You're actually building it for that business's customers. It's those customers who are going to be viewing it, using it, and interacting with it. So we need to be thinking about, okay, who's actually using this? Because sure, our clients, the business, they are going to be looking at the website. They're going to be interacting with it in the back end, and they're going to be managing orders. They're going to be managing inquiries, that sort of stuff. All very well and good. But these websites need to be designed for their customers, because they're the ones who need to be convinced that that business is the right business to work with or to buy from. So that's where we start, and then from there we go and design the website, build up the content, and develop it into a fully functional website that works well for our clients.
So talk to me about the core transformation of your customer's experience. Share a concrete story or an example of how somebody's come to you and how you've made their life so much better. You've either grown them, you've done your magic, so to speak.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. One story that comes to mind, and this is I have so many of them actually, but one that comes to mind is a landscaping business that we worked with. So they do gardens and gardening and landscaping. And they came to us. He was a one-man band at the time, and he was mowing lawns, and he hated it. It was previously he had I think he'd worked for another company doing these fantastic landscapes in people's gardens, and he loved doing that sort of work. But just due to the business and what he was what he was advertising himself as, he ended up having this pretty solid collection of lawn mowing clients that were just keeping him busy, ticking him over. Sort of customers who you instinctively wouldn't want to get rid of because they're paying your bills, it's regular income, that sort of stuff. A really good solid base, but he didn't enjoy it, and he wanted to be doing other things. He wanted to be doing these cool landscaping jobs in big homes and in the posh ends of Auckland and working on these really cool projects. But he just wasn't picking any up. He didn't have a website at the time. He was doing all of his stuff through word of mouth, through brochures and leaflets, and most of that advertising was around the lawn mowing side of the business, because that's where his mind was, and he was logically thinking, okay, well, 80% of our work is lawn mowing. Let's just continue getting more and more of that. Mm-hmm. But we sat down, and he said that he hates that work because it's tedious. He's out there, rain, hail, or shine, and he's lugging these lawn mowers around, and it's just tiring him out, and he's not enjoying it. And he wants to do this. He wants to do much more creative work. So we built him a website that really focused on the areas that he wanted to do and the clients he wanted to pick up. Not the clients he had per se, but the clients that he really wanted to pick up. And long story short, a few perhaps 18 months later, we keep in touch with our clients, and over that time we sort of saw quite a lot of growth with him. And about 18 months goes by, and he's got a team of people. He had, I think, sort of 4 or 5 people in his team. He was doing predominantly landscaping jobs in these posh houses in the nice ends of Auckland, doing exactly what he wanted. He'd built up a really good business that he was super happy with. He loved going in every morning. He was still doing, his team was still doing a fair amount of the lawn mowing stuff because, that money was still coming in. He wasn't having to do it because he'd been able to get these bigger projects that he could work on and pay himself. And financially, it was much better for the business because there were chunkier jobs.
Sure.
And I think that's a pretty cool story, because it isn't just it's not just a story of someone had a business, they wanted to go from 8 people to 10 people doing the same thing, but it was a real lifestyle change for him. He went from having a business that he didn't really enjoy, he was good at, but he didn't really enjoy, to a business that he just thrived in, and he was he just loved life at that point, and just really enjoyed what he was doing.
Wow, that's
And
an
that all
amazing
came down to
transformation.
that all came down to just marketing the services that he wanted to pick up and targeting the clients that he wanted to pick up, rather than just saying to anyone and everyone, I'll mow your lawns for you.
So you've transformed this gentleman because you just changed the branding and the message. So how else did you get the word out there that you did new flyers, talked about high-end landscapes? Oh, yeah, we do lawn mowing as well. But how did you change that messaging and that branding that he was doing? And were you using things like Google Ads, Google platforms, or Meta, or any of those paid ads? Was it organic? So talk to me a little bit about the strategy. You don't have to give away the secret sauce. Because I'm trying to find out what makes you different than everybody, all the other website and marketing companies out there. And I've talked to several of those over the years. So I'm trying to figure out what makes you different, and a little bit of your strategy, but obviously not the whole strategy.
Yeah. So the first thing was really just going back to that customer avatar. And whilst normally we would say, okay, who are your top 5 customers and what are the similarities between them? Of course, that would have meant that he was picking up more lawn mowing work, because all his work was lawn mowing. So we sort of approached it differently, given the circumstances and the situation. And we said, okay, who are the clients who you're wanting to pick up? What do they look like? And from there, we created a website that didn't ignore what he was currently doing. So we did have mentions of lawn mowing, but we changed it up. So we had all of the imagery was that sort of ideal client type imagery. So you'd have the landscapes that he wanted to be creating, and the messaging within there. Almost, if you were to read the website, it would say, it would definitely come across as they are the expert in the industry for this landscaping work, this stuff that they really want to pick up. So I guess one of the sort of hints and tips that I always say to people is you want to make sure that you are talking to the people who you're wanting to pick up, not just the people who are around you. So if you're wanting to, this is such a good example with this landscaping company, because if he were to want to continue to pick up lawn mowing jobs, then the website would have just been all about lawn mowing and the fantastic lawns that he mows and how he does it and all that sort of stuff. But he wanted to get away from that, so we avoided that. We targeted exactly who he wanted to pick up. We created just the overall, the brand, or at least the messaging throughout the website, and the imagery and all of that, really targeted and focused on the people who he wanted to pick up. And I think that was the biggest thing. I think the biggest thing was just making sure that that the website was focused on the people he actually wanted to speak to. And then when people found his website, which was mostly through local sort of Google search, so your Google business profiles and local SEO and those sorts of things. When they saw his website, they thought, oh yeah, we want this guy because he's done he does all of this. And then once he'd picked up a couple of those jobs, then we had photography, we had case studies of the work that he really wanted to do. So we just blasted that, and all of a sudden he became this authority in the world of high-end landscaping.
Have you incorporated any AI into the website or any of your marketing strategy yet?
Into this specific one, we hadn't. So this was a few years ago that we did this. So it was a bit before. It was probably 2018 that we started that. 2019 around there that we started that one. So it was a little before the AI revolution. But there are certainly things that we're using AI for. Generally speaking, across the board when creating websites. A lot of strategy stuff, understanding markets, understanding what people are wanting to see when they visit a website. AI can be really useful for that.
What exciting impact do you plan on making? What is it that you hope to do?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think it's something that changes all the time. And I think if you were to have asked me that 3 or 5 years ago, it would be different. So I think at this point, just wanting to, wanting to grow the business, wanting to take on more people so we can have more impact, and have a bit more impact on businesses around the world as well. So most of our work has been in New Zealand, for obvious reasons. That's where we're based. But what we can do or what we do rather, can be done anywhere. So, and for anyone. So, businesses in the United States or in the United Kingdom or wherever in the world, we can work with them. So just building the business up to a point where we can expand the amount of impacts that we can have on businesses in New Zealand and around the world is probably what I'd like to see happen in the next 3 to 5 years for sure.
I have a card here, so we're doing this with some of our guests. So I think we're pretty much done the grilling. Hopefully, is there anything else that you'd like to plug before I get the last two? The last two is answer one of these questions, and then also, what's the questions you have for the next guest? What is your proudest moment? And this could be work, this could be life, this could be anything.
My proudest moment has to be, I think one of them, there are so many times in life that there are so many things that have happened in life that I'm proud of, to be honest with you. But which is a really, I think, thinking about it and looking at it like that is a pretty cool position to be in. But I think starting up at a young age and there was a time in school. So here's a story for you, Chris.
Okay.
When I was in high school, it was year 10, as we call it. I don't know what that would be equivalent in the United States, but I will have been 14.
Okay.
I was one of my subjects was French. Now I wasn't to be honest with you, wasn't that interested in the subject, and I wanted to do stuff. Exactly. I wanted to do more in business and business related stuff because it was an interest of mine. Yeah. As we've perhaps established since then. And I went to the dean of my year group and said, basically, I want to swap French for economics, which was the only business related topic that we had at the school at the time. And he basically, long story short, he turned around and said to me, Will, I'm not going to let you do that because I just don't think you're clever enough to do economics.
Interesting.
And through that time, now at a young age, if you get told that at 14, you're most likely going to believe it.
Yeah.
So I think with that point and that happening at such a young age, to then only a few years later, whilst still at the same school, launch my first business that has then 12 and a half years later continued to be something of a success, I think is probably a real proud, or something that I'm really proud of, is not listening to someone at such a young age as well, not listening to someone who could have very easily changed the course of my life in a negative way had I just been like, oh yeah, maybe you're right, maybe I'm not clever enough for this business stuff. So I think probably starting the business, given the fact that I had been told by somebody in a position of authority in my life that I'd never be able to understand a P&L statement, let alone run a whole business. That's probably my proudest moment is launching this despite the naysayers.
Last question for you. What is it something that we can ask the next participant, the next podcast?
Who has been your outside of family, friends, people you actually know? Who has been your biggest influence in your life, in your business, in your life? Someone who you don't know, someone you've idolized. And what have they taught you?
Thank you, Will Langson from Zesty down in Auckland, New Zealand, for hanging out with us today on What's Your Story podcast. I appreciate you hanging out.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. So the website, if you'd like to check out our work, is zestydesign.co.nz, or Z if you're American.
That's NZ for those American folks that don't know what the Z is for those British. So appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with us. Take care.
Behind every win you see is a scene you just heard. The doubts, the detours, and the decision that changed everything. Circle the moments that hit you the hardest and turn it into one move you'll make this week. If you found this useful and informative, please share it with someone whose story you'd like to make just a little bit easier. Like, follow, and drop a moment in the comments. Your key takeaway may be the one that we share live on the show next. And until next time, keep writing the story that only you can live.